think that this is now something like 10 or 11 times that you've been at 500. Is it? Do you feel like what do you see in terms of the bigger picture with this team?
We are where we are, and we got to keep grinding. We know that there's going to be guys coming back. Big guys in the middle of the lineup. We just got to make sure we stay in the hunt, because we will pitch. Some kids are making strides. Vaughn is putting good at bats. Rafael is feeling it's getting better. So just keep grinding with them. We got a big series this weekend against the Tigers for bragging rights. So let's win the series and be happy in the household.
Well, there you go. Alex Cora last night in an exchange with Alex Spear of the Boston Globe, talking about, for lack of a better description, state of the Red Sox, where they are. State of the 2024 Red Sox, where they are. And you heard Alex Spear ask the question there of, this is the 11th, 10th, 11th, 12th time, whatever it was that he said in there, that the Red Sox have been at the 500 mark for the season. So I have a couple of questions tonight that are big picture in nature that relate to the Red Sox. And I, again, will give you the backdrop that we will continue to have, which is if you are following this team, the question is why? What is drawing you? And I'm not being a wise ass about it. I mean that sincerely. If you are watching the games, because most people aren't, and those of you who aren't watching might say, well, team's not good enough. I don't believe in ownership, or it's still basketball season, or what have you. Ideally, I would like specific responses on that question when I say, why are you watching? Not just, I love baseball, because that suggests that you'd watch any game at any time. So maybe you're hardcore. Maybe you watch the Red Sox no matter what. I'm just telling you that the television ratings this season are lower than they've been in a long, long time. And frankly, I think the interest level overall in the team, and that is a very intangible, unscientific way to describe it, but the buzz factor, if you want to call it that, surrounding the Red Sox, the overall interest level, and I can judge this by the number of people that ask me about the team, that thing is lower than I can remember it in 30 years. So that, again, that is a backdrop that will always be there, because I don't think it's going away this season. But I do have a couple of questions I want to ask people here at the beginning of the show tonight. One is, should we be more impressed? And I'm talking about the baseball now. Okay, I'm not talking about the Red Sox organization. I'm talking about the Red Sox team on the field. Should we be more impressed than we have been by the fact that they are 500? Now, I know that's a low bar, but my expectations for this team coming into the year were pretty modest. We're frankly on the low side like most people. Then they've had the injuries that they've had. And we can rattle off Lucas Giolito and Tristan Casas. Rafael Devers missed some time. Trevor Story is out for the season. Garrett Whitlock now out for the season. These are impact injuries. Yet they're a 500 team and they're 2.5 games out. So should we be giving them a little bit more credit than we are? And secondly, really, I have another one too, but let me add this one. In terms of the bigger picture development of the Red Sox, the bigger picture development, do you feel any better about them now than you did at the beginning of the year? And when I say the bigger picture, I'm talking about the young players, the development of the young players, maybe the emergence of pitching. Do you feel any better about that, the state of the organization, than you did a couple of months ago? Because I think there's an argument to be made for it. Now, it's hard to do in the middle of the season when you are used to wanting competitive games and a competitive product and a championship caliber team. And then at the same time, you're building the organization in the background. Because let's face it, building the organization doesn't sell tickets at the big league level. Winning does. That's what sells tickets. That's what promotes interest and draws eyeballs. Competitiveness at the big league level. And when I say competitiveness, I mean competitiveness for a championship. And let me throw one more at you. Alex Cora. We talked about him with Jared Carabas last night. We'll play some of that sound for you. We'll continue to talk about it going forward. Because again, with the Red Sox right now, the bigger picture issues are the only ones that matter. Nobody is expecting anything from this team in 2024. But as it pertains to Cora, do you want him back? Some of you call in, bash Cora, blame him for what has happened here over the last couple of years. People love to kick the crap out of the manager. It's a standard thing in any discussion about baseball, and I'm all for it. If you want to do that, that's fine. I don't blame Cora. I don't think they've had the personnel to win, but that is, again, a different discussion. But the manager, do you want him back? Do you think the Red Sox want him back? Does it even matter to you the importance of a manager on a big league team? Because Cora, sadly, is one of the few talking points about this team and one of the a few points of interest and, frankly, one of the few people in uniform that fans seem to have a strong opinion about, one way or the other. Nobody knows Vaughn Grissom. People don't really have that strong an opinion about Jarren Duran. Not that he stinks or is having a bad year, but you get the idea. It's a lot of 4A players, as Jared Carabas put it last night. So, all those things. But I come back to Alex Spear in that discussion with Cora. How do you feel about being 500? 56 games in. They were 554 games in. They've gone 1-1 since. On their way to 81-81. Astonishingly mediocre. Well, this is where we are, Cora says. This is what we are. This is where we are. And wait till I give you some of the stats on the competition the Red Sox are facing, which we'll do in the next segment, because we have some other Cora comments from postgame. There was a 3-question exchange that Alex Spear had with Cora last night. We just played the first one for you. Jimmy Stewart, in fact, you know what? If we could, let's play it again just to refresh it, because, again, it was at the beginning of the show. Sometimes I just think people miss it. This is the first of 3 questions that Alex Spear asked Alex Cora after last night's game.
You guys, I think that this is now something like 10 or 11 times that you've been at 500. You know, is it? Do you feel like, you know? What do you see in terms of the bigger picture with this team?
We are where we are, and you know, we got to keep grinding. We know that there's going to be guys coming back. You know, big guys in the middle of the lineup. We just got to make sure we stay in the hunt, because we will pitch. Some kids are making strides, you know. Vaughn is putting good at bats. Rafael is feeling it's getting better. So just keep grinding with them, you know. We got a big series this weekend against the Tigers for bragging rights. So let's win the series and be happy in the household.
Okay, big series with Detroit. When's the last time you heard that one? Big series with the Tigers. And you know what? He might be right. I think the Red Sox and the Tigers in that order are the first 2 teams out of the wild card. So they are 7th and 8th in the American League. 2.5 games the Red Sox are behind the Minnesota Twins for that final wild card spot. And incredible as it seems, so this is what you are now. You're the Tigers. You're the Tigers. And I know how a lot of you feel about it, but I want to hear from you. Bill and Lynn. Bill, what do you got?
I guess my token of the Red Sox, Tony, I don't watch them for the same reason I don't shop at Walmart. Cheap crap. The infuriating part is they have Walmart quality at Nordstrom prices. I'm out. I'm not watching anymore. Thank you.
Okay. So, Bill, a lot of people feel the way you do. Can't necessarily blame you for it. That the Red Sox have skimped on the product, which they have. It's not quite as egregious as everyone thinks it is, but they've skimped on the product. And when you look at the team on the field right now, there aren't a lot of guys that you would call regular major leaguers. There are a handful. Rafael Devers certainly is not a Walmart product. Had a stretch recently where he homered in 6 straight games. Jarren Duran is now a legitimate big leaguer, but I would also say he's a legitimate big leaguer at age 27 or 28. It's not like Jarren Duran, he's in the prime of his career. It took him to get to this age before he was ready to be an everyday big leaguer. But he's a big leaguer. I would say the same thing about Connor Wong. He's a big league player. But I would put him in more of the Walmart category, as I would Jarren Duran. They're not necessarily guys that you would expect to be everyday players on a big market, championship caliber team. Ceddanne Rafaela, definitely Walmart. Wilyer Abreu, at this stage, Walmart. And you go right around that, and that pretty much is it, by the way, in terms of the non-Walmart players. You got a couple that aren't. Everybody else is of the Walmart variety. So that's fair. It's a fair criticism. But where the Red Sox are organizationally, 500 again. They've basically been a 500 team now for 5 years. 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, and 24. 6 years, if you count this one. And we're just a little ways into it. Even with the terrific season they had in 2021, they've been a mediocre operation for 5 or 6 years. And Alex Cora was asked about it. It really was the essence of Alex Spear's column in today's Boston Globe, which if you haven't read, you should. Because it was a good time, and I give Alex Spear credit for this. Frankly, thank you, Alex, for giving us tonight's show. But the whole idea of, are the Red Sox really getting any better? Or are they just still spinning their wheels? 28-28 after 56. Third of the season's in the books. They've been at 500, I think 10 or 11 times, as Alex Spear said. That is not going to get any more eyeballs on the team. It's not going to promote interest in the team, and it's certainly not going to keep you glued to the television set or to the standings or anything like that. 617-779-0985. We'll get to your calls. Continue to play that exchange between Cora and Alex Spear from last night's game when we come back.
This is the Sports Hub.
You've also seen what's been happening against the elite teams that you guys have been facing. You also know the stretch that you're in. How important are these coming series against teams that are all in really good positions?
I mean, I'm going to sound like Bill here, On to the Tigers, We got to play good against the Tigers. That's where we at, and we cannot look ahead. We know we have guys coming back, and that's in a few weeks or a month or whatever. We got to grind with the people that we have here, and tomorrow we're facing one of the best pitchers in big leagues, right? He's doing an amazing job, and we have to go out there and grind with them and try to win a ball game.
We played that comment earlier in the day. I wanted to play it again because that last part of it I find interesting. And Cora says we're facing one of the best pitchers in the big leagues tomorrow, which is today's game against Detroit. The Tigers starter tonight is Jack Flaherty. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you Jack Flaherty stinks, because I don't think he stinks. I think he's pretty good. One of the best pitchers in the big leagues. Jack Flaherty is this year 1-4 with a 3.84 ERA. He's allowed 57 hits in 61 innings. He's given up 9 home runs. Now, his strikeout to walk is off the charts good. And the stuff is terrific. Okay, but overall for his career, his ERA is 3.75. He's 43-38. I know people don't care about one-loss records anymore. Silly me, I do. Because it is about wins and losses at the end of the day. And I know everybody else always thinks, and I say everybody else, the analysts, the nerds, the geeks, the dorks, all look at one-loss record and say, well, that's a product of so many other things. I agree. But I also do believe that it's a product of competitiveness and being able to pitch to situations and pitch situationally, play situationally, that sometimes you got to win games 3-2, sometimes you got to win them 7-6. And I like Flaherty. I don't know. I would have loved that the Red Sox got him at the deadline last year, but they didn't. I don't know that I would call him one of the best pitchers in the big leagues. So I wonder if there is what Cora's emphasis is on, or logic or reasoning is for that. Flaherty signed for 1 year and $14 million. Cheap contract. 1 year and $14 million. So is this a guy Cora wanted during the offseason and the Red Sox wouldn't give him more than the Tigers did? Is that the idea? Because there are a lot of guys out there that are, pretty good pitchers that did not go for big dollars that didn't come here. Imanaga with the Cubs is another good one. The Red Sox tried to feed everybody that one, that if they don't get Yamamoto, they're in on Imanaga. They didn't get him. He's been dynamite. So when a guy actually pitches well, and he was a free agent, and he didn't cost much, who gets blamed for that? In other words, you made the evaluation properly, but you didn't get the player and he went for cheap. So whose fault is that? The organization wasn't willing to pony up and pay a little bit more, and it's not just the pitchers. Teoscar Hernandez, who went to the Dodgers for 1 year and $23.5 million. Could you have had him for a multi-year deal? Could you give him $250 guaranteed? He effectively has that from the Dodgers. I think there's a vesting option, but how about 3 years? Could you have done that? Some of the guys that they missed on were not blockbuster contracts. So Felger said this earlier in the day, and it leaves you no choice but to think winning in 2024 was not a priority. And yet, they're 500, 2.5 games out of the wild card. Martin in Texas, regular caller. Martin, what do you got?
Hey, Tony. I just wanted to answer some of the questions you asked at the beginning of the first segment on Alex Cora.
Yeah,
I think that
go ahead, pick one, Martin, please.
Yeah, well, I think he's just really frustrated because I think he knows deep down that he could have managed this squad healthy to a wild card spot, and he has full confidence in that, and he's just very frustrated given the whole situation. But he also knows in the back of his head that regardless of the Red Sox outcome this season, he's going to be the highest paid manager in baseball afterwards.
Okay, so look, Martin, when we talk about Cora's comments, at the end of the day, if Cora's unhappy, and a lot of this stems from that story we read to you from Gethin Coolbaugh, Boston Sports Journal last night, Jared Carabas gave us his assessment of it. In fact, Jimmy, you know what? Just quickly, let's play that first answer from Jared. This is, I think I left a question in. So this is Jared really giving an overview of Cora's state of mind. Go ahead, Jimmy. Do you believe that assessment is generally correct, that Cora has been a little bit more intense or irritable, for lack of a better word, in the last couple of weeks?
I would say it's been the whole year.
Okay.
I think it started in spring training when he was kind of asked about his future with the Boston Red Sox, and he was just like, I'm at peace with it. He basically told you in spring training, I don't care.
Right.
I'm going to manage the season. We're going to see what happens. If we win, great. If we don't, not my problem. That's how I took it in spring training. And I will preface all of this by saying this season in particular is the least communication that I've had with him since he got here.
Okay.
Read into that however you would like.
See, I think Cora's state of mind, and Jared again thinks it's been all year. He's probably right. He's closer to it than I am. So I'm not going to sit there and tell you that Jared's wrong. He's probably right. I tend to read into things and say, well, Raphael is back in center field. Is Cora now pissed off that he doesn't have a shortstop? Like little things like that. But that would suggest that Cora thinks that he has a competitive team that can win something in October. I think Cora knows that he doesn't. I believe, just my 2 cents, I focus on the human part of it because at the end of the day, many of you like to look at these guys and think that they're somehow different. I'm telling you that they are they're no more different than anyone else. They're regular human beings who have the same, susceptible to the same emotions and grudges and resentment that everyone else is. You know what I think Alex Cora's issue is? You hired me in 2018 because you had a team that you needed to get over the top. And you thought I was that kind of manager that could handle a big talent, big market team and get it over the top. And I did. Now you're rebuilding and I'm still here and I've paid my debt. Yep, I made a big mistake. I'm grateful for the fact that you brought me back and let me manage again in the big leagues. I thought it was going to be with a competitive team again. I thought it was going to be more like 2021. Since that time, you've done nothing but turn this into a player development operation, and I'm not the guy for that. I want out. That's what I think he's pissed about, if he's pissed at all. Because maybe Carabas is right. Maybe he's basically said, you know what, do whatever you want. I'm out of here at the end of the year anyway. Bill in Texas. Bill, what do you got?
Hey, Tony, this question's been bothering me since you first posed it on Tuesday. And I've been thinking, 04 changed everything. And now people think management jumps in all the time. They forget this is the team that sold Babe Ruth. This is the team of the Yankees. I don't know where everybody started expecting us to buy. But this year's team is fun. Did you guys see Bernardino get out of that bases-loaded situation the other day? I came off the couch when he got those guys out.
Okay, so Bill,
Cora,
I'm going to let you go just because I have other people on the line. I understand, and I give you credit for digging in. I think you like the team. You're a Red Sox hardcore. You're going to continue to dig in. You're wrong to say that 04 changed everything. The television ratings in 07 were the highest of all time. And during that offseason leading into 07, Daisuke Matsuzaka, J.D. Drew, Jimmy, who was the other one? There was another big signing. Was it Julio Lugo?
Julio Lugo, yeah.
Okay. So the Red Sox made some big moves. At the time, Matsuzaka was a huge move.
We tracked the flight on NESN live coverage.
Huge. The posting fee was the same value as the contract. They blew everybody out of the water on the deal for Matsuzaka. So it's not like they weren't spending. They were. And in 2018, which was just 5 years ago, they had the highest payroll in the game. So if everything changed in 2004, then explain to me how it was that 14 years later they had the highest payroll in baseball. 04 changed some things. What changed more was 18. Whatever it was in the aftermath of that season, the Red Sox, or maybe it was 19, when they went 84 and 78, and they were probably pissed about it, that is when things started to change. Dombrowski got fired, and the Red Sox went to a different model. Why? That's when it changed. Not in 04, not in 07, not in 13. And we can examine there were a million things along the way that were factors. Larry Lucchino's gone. Theo Epstein left. All these things. Fine. But they were still the number one payroll in the game as recently as 2018. Number one. And they had the best team that they've ever had. So why all of a sudden they decide, well, now we're going to go young, we're going to go cheap, we're not going to pay for the star player anymore, which is really what it is. And I still think Devers was a necessity. If they let him go, they'd be the worst team in baseball or something close to it. Kevin Majori will get you caught up on headlines. We'll continue with this
you mentioned a couple times, the kind of your view of the Orioles, but looking at that team top to bottom, what are your impressions?
They're complete. They're a complete team. They do a lot of good stuff, and they keep getting better.
About the performance against good teams, how the Red Sox have struggled against good teams. Cora said, well, I'm going to give you the Belichick line. Then he's asked about the Orioles and said, good team, they can do everything, they're getting better. I think the order of those questions is important because in the third one, I think he's basically telling you the Orioles are what we want to be, what we should be, and what we now have to catch up to. I think that's Cora's way of saying that. And just to give you the actual numbers, and this was in Alex Spear's story in today's Globe, the Red Sox have played 21 games over 7 series against teams that are at least 5 games over 500. Okay, so again, teams that are 5 games over or more. So basically, let's just say good teams. 7 series, 21 games. They are 5-16 in the 21 games. They're 0-7 in those series. So are the Red Sox getting better? I mean, organizationally, I guess. I don't know. But in the standings, I don't think they're getting any closer. In fact, they might be getting worse. They're pitching better, and they can't keep up with these teams. They're not in the same stratosphere. And this isn't about being a pretty good team. It's about championships, about vying for championships. So a caller in the last segment said, did you see Brennan Bernardino get out of that mess the other night? As if that was some sort of highlight of the season. Boy, is that going to draw you to the TV to watch Brennan Bernardino to get out of a jam? The answer is no. Unless there's something on the line. So this is the part that really matters more than anything else. So if you want to tell me you're watching the games and you're a baseball hardcore, which is what that previous caller was, who was all geeked up about Brennan Bernardino, and I'm not mocking him for it, I'm just telling you that's who he is. He cares deeply. But the rest of you, most of you, you need stakes. You need to know that there is something that can be won or lost. Most notably, a championship. You go into it with an opportunity, and then you either capture that opportunity and seize it, or you fail. That's ultimately what draws you to watch. There have to be stakes. With this team this year, there are no stakes. There really aren't. If you think they can make the playoffs, great. Jared Carrabba said this last night. Well, do I think they could sneak in as that third wild card? Yeah, if some things happened, sure. What are they going to do when they get there? And I know that Felger's argument would be, well, it's a baseball playoffs, anything could happen. And he's right. But the point is, you have to believe that. You have to believe that they can get in and then anything else can happen. If you don't believe it, it's incumbent upon the team to get you there. So you do believe it. And they haven't given you that reason. So I can blame you for not believing, or I can blame them for not believing, which is why you don't believe. And I think it's the second thing. Kevin in the car. Kevin, what do you got?
Yeah, Maz, 2 weeks ago I called you and I told you the reason that I'm still watching this team is because I do believe that they can make that playoff spot. I believe, they make that wild card. But I asked myself this question the other day, and I'll ask you the same question. If they're 6 games over 500 at the trade deadline and they're in first in the wild card race, what's this organization going to do at the trade deadline? And when I gave myself that answer, that's when I stopped watching.
Okay, so I was just going to ask you what your answer was, but now I know you think they're going to sell. And I agree with you. They're going to sell. How does a story like the one Bob Nightingale reported over the weekend, or the detail that Bob Nightingale reported over the weekend, how does that go by and inspire confidence in fans? The Red Sox intend to sell Kenley Jansen before the deadline. Now, do I like Jansen? No. Jimmy Stewart, do you like Jansen?
No.
And when I say like him, I mean as a pitcher. Okay, I'm sure he's a perfectly decent, good guy.
Yeah.
But the idea, as a competitor.
He's a terrible competitor.
Okay.
Get in baseball shape.
Okay, so again, Jimmy, you don't like him. but he is their closer.
And he's been a bad closer for 2 years. He's been mediocre at best.
Okay, so they signed him, though, to a 2-year contract at $16 million per last year. They signed Chris Martin for the same kind of money. And yet, 500 team, 2.5 games out of the playoffs, and Bob Nightingale's reporting that the Red Sox intend to move on from Kenley Jansen. Well, then what happened on the field has no bearing at all whatsoever on what their decision-making is. They have decided that they're throwing away the season. Now, some are going to tell me, well, they have Liam Hendricks coming back. They're going to close with him. He'll be back in the middle of the season. They can afford to move Kenley Jansen. So you're telling me Liam Hendricks is going to be lights out right when he gets back?
100% yes, absolutely. That's sarcasm, by the way, for those who don't know.
So this is one of those things that how many times do we have to go through it where a guy comes back from an elbow injury or surgery and he's not the same guy for a while? So again, you can keep taking the cheese if you want. I'm not going to take the cheese. I think it's a horrible sign that there's already basically a guarantee that Kenley Jansen will be moved, according to one reporter who's covered the game for a long time before the trading deadline, and I bet you he won't be the only one.
Oh, I don't think it's a guarantee, Tony. I think this is out there because no one wants him. They tried to trade him in spring training and failed, and nobody wants him now. They see what we see, and they probably have advanced numbers telling other teams have advanced numbers saying, Kenley Jansen, we want nothing to do with this guy as our closer. And by the way, he's not a good postseason closer either. So it's not like you're getting him as a, like, if there's a situation where it's Eric Gagne and Jonathan Papelbon, like double closer situation. No, he's bad at closing, especially in the postseason. So this is out there because nobody wants Jansen, and the Red Sox are trying to leak something to Nightingale to be like, oh yeah, we're going to do this. Get your offers in now before it's too late.
Okay, and I would say, Jimmy, you're probably right. I would
Usually
also,
am.
I would also tell you though that in the case of Jansen, did you happen to see his outing from Sunday, by any chance?
Mediocre. It's probably one of the better ones of this season.
I thought he was dynamite. I thought it might have been the best he's looked all year. So maybe he wants out of here, and now he's going to give people a reason to trade for him.
So it took him 2 months to get there. That's professional.
But that's not the part of it that I'm focused on. I'm focused on, if you're the Red Sox and you're in it, why would you trade your closer? And the answer is because you don't really care about winning this year. You don't. Otherwise, you wouldn't do it.
And that's how Breslow has treated this season as an evaluation season.
Jim and Whitman. Jim, what do you got?
Hey, how you doing, Tony?
Good.
Yeah, Tone, I think one of the main guys that ruined this team by getting rid of a lot of good players was Chaim Bloom. And Cora was left with the crap that Bloom caused. That's my opinion, basically. I mean, you can't make chicken, salad out of chicken, so.
Yeah, so listen, and again, Jim, I appreciate the call. We can continue to blame Chaim Bloom forever. Who hired Chaim Bloom and why? The Red Sox knew what they were getting when they hired Bloom. They were getting a young, inexperienced executive from the Tampa Bay system that was going to, in theory, replicate what the Tampa Bay Rays were doing. That was the idea. So again, see this is the part I'm talking about. This is when things changed. That point is where the philosophy changed. There was a caller earlier who said 2004 changed everything. No, it didn't. Theo Epstein remained the general manager. Terry Francona remained the manager. The Red Sox continued to spend money out the ass. They won again in 2007 when their television ratings were at an all-time high. They continued to spend money even after Epstein left, although they went to Cherington and Jed Hoyer at that time. And I would tell you, that was still sort of them adhering to their model, which was hiring from within and going with a young GM and ones that they thought would be progressive. As it turned out, they were too conservative. Now, they won in 2013, don't get me wrong. But they were too conservative. Cherington was in particular. So after Cherington, they brought in who? Dave Dombrowski. Veteran, big-time, championship caliber GM. And they brought in Alex Cora in 2018. So they were continuing to go with established people or people from within who had worked in their operation until then. Then they started to lose and they went to Chaim Bloom. Why? What changed at that time?
Fighting.
That is when it changed.
Fighting. You had Larry Lucchino, Theo Epstein, Dave Dombrowski, and Ben Charrington to a degree who would fight with the owner over the direction of the franchise.
So I see
and
what
that
you mean.
changed at some point.
So I see what you mean, Jimmy. There wasn't pushback anymore. But again, like I would say, to me, I guess what I'm getting at is on the ownership level, something changed. Something changed. They started to look at it differently. And they said, we're not getting the pushback from Larry. But that's why they pushed Larry out, because he was giving pushback. In other words, they didn't want that anymore. Why?
Well, Dave Dombrowski pushed back because John Henry is on the record saying that he was against the Chris Sale contract, but he still signed off on it. So that's an example to me of Dave Dombrowski pushing back and getting something that he wanted.
Right. And maybe that was the impetus for them to then say, we're not doing it this way anymore.
Because Mookie Betts was coming up, and they obviously didn't want to pay Mookie Betts, or he didn't want to be here or whatever, and it went to hell in a handbasket from there.
Right. And I keep asking the same question, though, Jimmy. Why? Why all of a sudden did they say we have to change the model? Why? Did revenues drop? Were they worried about the future of the game? Like what? To me, there's something that has not been answered by ownership about why they all of a sudden wanted to change. What, they were getting tired of paying? Or they had invested in so many other things they needed to cut back on the Red Sox? What, there's an honest answer there that somewhere we're not getting. We'll wrap it up with your calls when we come back. I'm asking a bigger question for another day that we'll probably never get the answer to. Why the philosophical change for the Red Sox? And the idea that the philosophy isn't different, I'm sorry, I'm not buying it. When they sucked in 2012 and they ripped the thing apart, they went out and spent money and brought in veteran players to try to compete while they were rebuilding the thing. They wanted to get veteran players who could compete, get into the playoffs while they were rebuilding it. Now they're not even doing that. Why? So that's the one that to me, I just can't get to the bottom of it. I was saying to Jimmy Stewart during the break, maybe it's as simple as that they own a lot more entities now, and any extra money they have has got to go to other things. I don't know. I'm guessing something like that. Maybe that's what it is while they're waiting for the farm system to turn out these players. Which, again, I want to see how the Red Sox mesh all this, how they marry it all together. Okay, fine. Kyle Anthony's coming. I'm sorry, Roman Anthony, Kyle Teal, and Marcelo Meyer, all coming. All positional players, all bat left-handed. Where are you going to get the right-handed bats in the pitchers? And how, and also, when Anthony, Meyer, and Teal are ready to impact the big leagues, which is going to be 2 or 3 years in, is Tanner Houck still going to be here? Where's the pitching going to come from? You see what I'm saying? The timelines aren't going to mesh either. Mike in a car. Mike, what do you got?
Hey, Tony, I've got an answer for you, at least a theory. First of all, I'm not a baseball guy. I'm more of a basketball guy, and I'm an organizational guy. So, one, I think they're trying to change culture. I think the reason they're trying to change culture is two things. One is there's better baseball players all over the world, and there's more talent and depth of talent than there's ever been. That means all the teams are going to be better. So they've got to figure out a way to differentiate yourself. Ask yourself what this show would be like if you were in New York or in San Diego with all the money that they spent and absolutely crap the bed, right? So I think there's something fundamentally going on.
Wait a minute. Stop for a second. San Diego, I'll give you, that thing has been a disaster. But then the failure becomes a story. In other words, there's so much invested that, again, there are stakes. The Yankees haven't won a title. Right now they're in
No, I'm sorry, the Mets.
Okay. All right, go ahead.
The Mets, right? Cohen spent hundreds of millions of dollars last year. Right? I know he's got a lot, but that still stings, and he got nothing for it. He had a right. So the point is, I think the steroid era, it's a little dated, but I think the steroid era has changed the fact that now the best players are 23, 24, 25, 26. They just don't have the big names. And as a result, it doesn't pay to sign somebody who's 33, 34, 35 to a $30 million a year contract. And as a result,
okay, but
right,
Mike, I'm going to let you go. That has always been true. That has always been true. What you just said has always been true. The free agent contracts have always been called stupid. Always. That has never changed. You're going to fail on most of those deals. They are still necessary. It's still part of the cost of doing business if you want to win. So, Anthony Rendon with the Angels has been a disaster. He was a critical part of the Nationals winning, and I know they weren't paying him big money at the time, but you get the idea. The point is you still need star players, and even if they end up being hurt for 5 of the 6 years, the year that you win, they end up being a big part of it. More often than not, I think. So I'm not telling you it's smart business. I'm just telling you it's the reality of sports. So if you want to tell me that the answer is, and you might be right, it might be this simple. They're tired of overpaying for championships. That's what it is. They're not willing to take the financial risk anymore to win championships. They would rather pay a little less and win 85 games, make the playoffs, and then roll the dice. Because that's how the Tampa Bay Rays have done it. And again, I will go so far as to tell you the Tampa Bay Rays have not won a World Series. The Oakland A's, under Billy Beane, did not win a World Series. The Minnesota Twins had the longest postseason losing streak in Major League history, but they were in the playoffs a lot. Now, does the money guarantee a title? No. But it's hard to win one without it. Really hard. So if you want to tell me that's the philosophical shift, then fine. They're not willing to pay the price to win championships anymore. Because it's a steep price. So why do it when we've already won 4? Well, then you don't want to win anymore. You've lost the will to win. We say this about athletes all the time, by the way. We look at athletes and say, he's already got 3 titles under his belt. We were talking about Kawhi Leonard earlier today. Well, he got hurt a lot. I think those things go hand in hand. You stop playing through injuries when you've won. You won't do it anymore. You don't need to. So they don't need to win. I don't think. In their minds, they probably don't need to win anymore. So it's not as important to them. And again, I'm not trying to be psychotic about it. I'm trying to be matter of fact about it, rational about it, but it's something like that. Joe Murray's got Kevin Majori's got your headlines. Joe Murray's got you for the rest of the night. We'll see you tomorrow.
WBCFM HD1 from the Town Fair Tire Studios.